What's going on, and welcome to the channel. Daniel here, Mr. Cuervo Racing, and today I am going to show you how to reassemble a Raptor 700 transmission. Now, a lot of guys seem to be a little afraid of the 700 transmissions or other ATV models. Some of the processes or theories or ways you put stuff together is the same between a lot of different models, or the same theory applies. So we're going to start with the basic and move to the main or more complex setup. So over here on the right hand side we have the reverse idler shaft and gear. Here in the center we have the main shaft or the input shaft. This is where the clutch assembly would go on, and here we have the output shaft or secondary shaft where your front sprocket would go on. So we will start with every time you pull down an engine, if you have any type of failure, whether it be rod bearing or transmission gear or piston, something like that, you should completely disassemble and clean the transmission, because the transmission does get oiled. You do have oiling holes in all these components, and oil runs through the bushings to oil the gears. On the 700 transmission and many of the ATVs, some transmissions are splash fed, so they are not they don't have the oiling holes pushing oil through them. So some are just splash fed. It really depends on which model you're working on, but the Yamaha 700 and YFZ and 660 and those bases are all pump fed transmissions. So we'll start with the reverse idler. Now, I assemble them using engine oil. So we will oil everything as we go. Light oil on any of the mating surfaces. So if you go ahead and put that bushing on there, you're like, okay, that's kind of looks all right. But if you have a gear on here and it is spinning, it's going to want to spin this bushing. And if this bushing is only set up against a snap ring, eventually it's going to push hard enough on that snap ring with the rotation, and it's going to want to push that snap ring off. So everywhere there's a snap ring, there's either going to be a flat thrust washer, or there's going to be a splined washer. And that either lets the pressure rotate against the thrust washer and the thrust washer can spin, or it'll be held, the spline washer will be held in place on the spline and keep it from moving altogether. But wherever there's a snap ring, there's going to be some type of washer up against it to prevent that from pushing against it. So same on the end, on the other side of the bushing, it's going to see a washer as well as a snap ring. And I'll come back to something on snap rings here in a second. Alright, so simple first step done. And set that aside. Got a fly in here bothering me. Okay, so onto the input shaft. So when assembling, same thing, you're cleaning it. You are gonna look at this fifth gear journal here and see if there's any damage to it. This one looks great. Make sure there's no pitting on the first reverse gear, or any issues or anything with the spline. So that's kind of first thing. Clean, inspect, come back to it where you're looking at it once again when you're assembling it. So we're going to start with same thing here. Apply oil. Run the gear on. I always spin them to spread that oil throughout all the surface. So here up against a gear, even though this doesn't have a bushing, you have a part that is rotating, so it is going to get a spline washer. So I lay out all the gear components that are going on the transmission, so everything's here in front of me. Make sure I have everything and make sure nothing is getting lost. So coming back to the snap ring I was going to tell you about, and this will kind of be hard to see on camera, but when you have it in your hand, these are punched out of a plate, and when they punch, basically there's a sharp side, which is this side, and there's a round side. So when you have it in your hand, you can tell, but the sharp side, we're always going to place the sharp side on the side that's going to get thrust pressure toward it. So this gear right here, obviously it can push this way, has nowhere to go that way, but it can push up this way against that snap ring. So we're going to put the sharp side facing up so it grabs a little better in that snap ring groove. So with all the snap rings, you're going to do that. Sometimes you run into a situation where there's no perfect way to put it or no definite answer, and that's kind of up to you at that point. But that's how I do it. So after every installation of every part that does spin or does move, we want to verify that it does spin freely to make sure there's no concerns as we're going. So this is fifth gear. We got fifth gear on. Next we have the third gear primary, and we'll drop that on. Now sometimes the edges of these get a little sharp, where that gear will get a little snug, and you can kind of tap it on the table and let it fall through. So same with some of these snap ring grooves on used transmissions, they'll get a little sharp right there, and the gear won't want to travel over it, where you can see that doesn't want to drop off freely. But we got to make sure that in its range of motion for this gear that it moves freely, and it does. So on this setup, we got another snap ring. We're going to put the sharp side down because it is going to support this side of this spline washer. So if that gear has anywhere to go, it's going to be going down. So I'm going to do that. Oh, you're back, huh? So snap ring on, thrust washer, or spline washer. The spline washers, they also do have a sharp side and a smooth side, and we're going to treat them kind of the same way. The sharp side facing where the thrust is going to be. That just allows a little bit freer movement, or it won't have a sharp edge up against this thrust side. It'll be smooth or a bit rounded. So you have your collars. They're just listed as collars, but basically a bushing or bearing collar. You can slide on. You can index these of where they're going to spray. I'll normally index them offset from the primary oiling hole. So I got that on. Got that oiled. Make sure everything goes together smooth. Now we come to this style self-locking two-piece washer. I've seen these mixed up many times or not installed properly. Same thing, sharp side, smooth side. This thick one is going to go on first. So the one that's flat that has the notches in it is going to go on first. This one goes down in the splines, and when it gets to the snap ring groove, it can rotate. So basically it's rotating half a tooth over, and this one with the pause on it is going to lock it in place. So it can't come apart. So I've seen these put on backwards many a times, and there is a thickness difference if you do put it on backwards, where it's going to allow this gear to move more than it's supposed to move. So we're on to the last gear here, second gear. Snap ring will finish out this this side of the transmission. You always want to make sure these snap rings click in place and are fully seated. Sometimes they'll try to fool you. So that's done. On to the main output shaft. Need a bushing on there, of course. Oil that. Get a little more oil in here, like that. So once again, we need a spline washer. Gonna oil the thrust surface that this goes against. And snap ring. These snap rings can get away from you. Recommend wearing safety goggles or glasses. Put your eye out if it does. So spline washer, snap ring. This is second gear. We're putting on fourth gear. Fourth gear drops on. We have another snap ring. Now doing these transmissions, a good set of snap ring pliers is going to be your best friend. I've used these Mac ones for years and years, and they've been great. But definitely a set of cheap snap ring pliers might get you through the day, but definitely a pain in the ass. I don't recommend that. If you can find a high quality set somewhere, really save yourself some headache. Let's see. Wow. Yeah, so this shaft has a little burr right there that at the end that's holding up. It's kind of tough to smooth these out because this is a hardened material. So if it is right at the end, sometimes just leaving it alone is works out the best because nothing's moving in that location. Let's see. So second gear, fourth gear output, third gear. This is the one that Yamaha blessed us with that always tends to break. Get to that point. Now we're going to put the two-piece locking ring on. Or locking washer set. Thick flat one goes on first. One with the pause locks it in, secondary. And this one is just held in place by the fifth gear output. So that just holds that washer there, and as we fill this gap and get the snap ring there, then all this stays tight so that washer can't back away. So we got one more. One more bushing here. Looks like we got a little piece of something. All right. Third gear, fifth gear, first gear. So, a couple things left to do, and we're pretty much done doing this transmission. So, to tear down a transmission, once you have it out of the engine, to pull it apart and clean it and put it back together, maybe half hour of time, 45 minutes maybe, but well worth doing. Sometimes I pull these apart and they're just packed with metal, and the collars are all scored up from that metal as well. So we get to this point and you're going to look at the they have a name for this, I forget what it is, but it's not segment. Either way, it's got 3 ears on it. Make sure it goes on this side with the 3, match stuff up. Kind of common, use a little bit of common sense. You can look in the parts fiche, but it's not really laid out in a manner where you can see it well enough, see what's going on. So last thing, a little bit more oil on there. If you guys know that your engine's going to sit around for a little bit and not be ran, you might want to put something other than engine oil on it. That's kind of up to you to decide, but this engine's going to be together running in a bike fairly soon here. So looks like I brought out an extra washer or a snap ring. So I'm not going to worry about that. But let's see, sharp side is going to go out. All right, so that is it. That is your full transmission. Sits just like that in the engine. This goes right here and sits like that. So there you have it. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share, and if you have a video topic that you're interested in, feel free to message it in the comment or email me. And we're open for some new ideas there. I've been a little delayed on getting videos out because we've been so busy. So we will catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.